now. There we go. All right. The quick announcements I have. The test is up now. I didn't announce it in class. I felt bad. And I didn't want anybody to start on it earlier than they had to. So I didn't post it till yesterday. It's up. It's online, open book, open note. You can't use the internet. You have to use the response browser. Just the browser though. You won't have to do the monitor. Since I'm allowing you to look at your book. No phones. It's due Thursday at midnight. I don't care when you do it, between now and Thursday at midnight. It's due Thursday at midnight. It's on chapters 15, 16, 17, and the book, What Has Government Done to Our Money? Okay. If you don't finish it by Thursday, I don't know what I'm going to do to you, but you will not enjoy it because we have a final to take next week. So the final will be easy. I'm just going to don't stress it. Take good notes. Do your quizzes for chapters 20, 21.
Is there any,
26. That's it. 27, I'm exempting. So you don't have to do 27. And you work for 27.
which one's got the athletics on
27.
it? Crap. I started.
I'll give you extra credit if you do. What I'll do is when I calculate the grades, if you did something on 27, or you want to do something on 27, I won't count that in the bottom, but I'll count the score you got on top. So it'll just be extra credit if you did it. Okay. So the exam is due Thursday by midnight, 15, 16, 17. What has government done to our money? Okay. Open book, open note. Now, the other thing I have is I sent an announcement out. I'm very sorry for having to cancel on Friday. Dr. Mark Thornton, who was scheduled to teach there, he had some type of a problem and he's in ICU. He's still there. So pray for him. So we need your help. So they had to cancel. But I have a virtual conference I scheduled it 10:30 to 2. Okay. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that long. I just did that so that if it goes a little bit over, someone doesn't miss work or whatever, or have to leave during, they get that block scheduled. Probably at about 12:31 at the latest. Okay, my guess. We've got at least 2 speakers, maybe a third. I already have scheduled a guy named Professor Per Byland, who he's a professor of entrepreneurship at Oklahoma State University. He is not just an expert on entrepreneurship, but he's kind of an innovator in entrepreneurial studies. He's going to talk about you on I'm just going to call it how successful entrepreneurs think. How successful entrepreneurs think. So it should be very interesting. I believe Joe Salerno, who's going to talk to us on entrepreneurship in Auburn, he's not in the hospital. I believe Joe Salerno is going to be talking for us. I haven't got it confirmed. And then the other one, I think we might have a local entrepreneur who's got a project he's working on here in town. He hasn't confirmed yet, so I don't want to mention his name. But this will be good. And Per Byland is a great speaker. He's very energetic. He's I think he's a couple years younger than me. We're alike in the way we talk and lecture. He's very well. He's Swedish though. He speaks perfect English. But I mean, we're not that alike. But he might have a little accent. But he's an interesting speaker. He's not going to be sending on 1922. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? Nothing like that. It'll be interesting. And good information that not a lot of people have on entrepreneurship. Like I said, he's kind of an innovator in it. That will be Friday, 10:30 to 2. Okay. Please be prepared to ask a question, especially if you want to maybe start your own business someday, or you just think you might want. ask a question. There's no dumb questions. Okay, there are no dumb questions. Professor Byland is a very nice guy. Okay, so is Salerno and whoever else is going to get. They're all very nice people. Okay, and if you ask them a question, they're gonna say, oh, this person needs to know this, and they're gonna answer it for you. So there's no dumb questions. There are none. Okay, be prepared, please, to at least ask one question during the whole thing. Okay. These people do this for me for free, for us, not for me. They don't care about me. They do it for you guys for free. Professor Byland blocked a big block of time to do this for us. He has a PhD seminar that he has to give right after it. Okay. For PhD students. So he's really making a sacrifice for us. He don't owe me nothing, so I'm cashing in a favor. I guess I owe him one now. But please attend if you can. That is worth 5 points of extra credit on your final grade. So like when I'm done with grades, if you got an 85, I add 5 to that. It's half a letter grade, you know, bump you up to an A. Okay.
Is that in here?
And if you're dual enrollment, you know, if you got 100 and then I put 5 more points on top of that, or 90 or something, you get above 100. So that'll help you with what do you call it? Or if you get what do you call it? We call that when you get the best student of the year award, valedictorian stuff. So you can get over 100 with this. All right.
You said our final's gonna be on chapters.
The final is going to be on chapters 20, 21, 26. It's mostly going to be straight from the lectures. Straight from the lecture.
Did you say
It's going to be on business cycles.
Friday? Did you say that's gonna be in here?
Friday. Oh, no, that's just going to be online. I'm not even going to come in for it. I'm going to do it from home because I've got people from 3 different locations, 4 if you count me, on there. So yeah, just you can do it at home. You know, all I ask is please be clothed. Don't pull. What's that guy from CNN? Don't do that. Oh gosh, that's worse than I thought. I just thought about that. I'm like, oh geez, he did more than just not wear clothes. All right, don't do that. Just wear clothes. All right, but if you want to eat your breakfast or whatever while you're watching it, you know, just that's fine. Just be clothed. Be clothed. Maybe you have a question you want to answer. You know, be on for the whole thing. Okay. All right. Today, first thing we're going to talk about Austrian business cycle theory. Okay. I have looked at all the different business cycle theories that have come out, and remember those facts of the business cycle we talked about. We talked about the fact that during a business cycle, you get a large, steep decline in output. Unemployment shoots up. Prices during the boom up or go up, fall during the bust. Those things we talked about. All the business cycles out there, those are the facts of the business cycle. Those are the things that economists agree happen. But only one business cycle theory that I know of can explain all those things. It incorporates all of those things. And that's the Austrian business cycle theory. It was developed by a man named Ludwig von Mises, we've talked about. He developed it. There was a professor named Professor Friedrich von Hayek who worked with him, but it was Mises's theory. Hayek got the Nobel Prize for it in 74, I believe, it's 72 or 74, after Mises had died. And many people think that the reason they waited until after Mises was dead to give the business cycle theory, the Nobel out for it, was because Mises was an uncompromising free marketeer and Hayek was more a compromiser. Okay. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is the cause of the business cycle. Okay. The Austrian theory of the business, and take notes on this, make sure you do, because this is the only place you're going to get it. Okay, cause. increases in the money supply that enter into credit markets first. Okay. So the Austrian business cycle theory states that the cause of the business cycle, that's the boom bust pattern of output we saw from chapter 16. The cause of it is increases in the money supply that enter into credit markets first. Okay. So someone creates money out of thin air, and that new money enters into the economy through credit markets, loan markets. Okay. And that's the way that money enters into our economy. The Federal Reserve, or the central bank, ours is the Federal Reserve, the central bank creates bank reserves for the commercial banks by buying assets. Oops. Okay. Typically, these were traditionally government bonds, okay, government debt. So the US government, let's say here in the US, runs a budget deficit. They spend more money than they take in taxes. The government has to borrow that money. They do that through bonds. The Treasury holds an auction. They say, we're auctioning off this debt. It's going to pay 5% interest, not anymore, but it's going to pay 2% interest over 30 years. And at the end of 30 years, we'll buy back the bond for $1,000 bucks. Those are payments that are to be made to the bondholder. And the government promises to make those payments. And people bid for those payments. And that money they bid goes into the Treasury, which is a part of the US government, and they fund their budget deficit with that money. Okay. But they have a bond out, and they have to pay those promised payments on the bonds. Okay. So usually a bank or a large institutional investor or a foreign central bank will buy that debt and hold it. When the central bank wants to increase the money supply, they do so. One of their main functions is through open market committee operations. That's where our central bank, the Federal Reserve, buys debt from the banks, from the large security dealers attached to the banks. They're called primary dealers. There's 13 of them. So the Fed goes to Wells Fargo Securities and says, we want to buy $1 billion worth of bonds from you. And when they do that, they create bank reserves out of thin air. They write them a check. Okay. That check is a promise to pay from the Fed. They'll send them the cash if they need it. The Wells Fargo Securities deposits that into their commercial bank, Wells Fargo Bank. They send the check to the Fed. And the Fed credits them $1 billion in reserves. That's a promise from the Fed. Remember, the Fed's separate from the government. It's a quasi-private central bank owned by member banks. It's a promise by them to send them the $1 billion in cash if they need it. And the problem is the Fed doesn't have any money, at least not any paper money. That's printed up by the Treasury Department, part of the US government. The Fed is not part of the US government. So it's a promise by the Fed to send the banks cash when they need it. Okay. And that creates a bank reserve. Okay. So as these bank reserves enter into the economy, they buy assets and they sell money in the form of bank, we're going to call it bank reserves. Most people think of it as money, but it's not. Bank reserves are not money yet. Okay. The commercial banks I'm moving this over here because here I'm explaining how this happens in our economy. Okay. The commercial banks operate on a principle called fractional reserve banking, which we've talked about. That means they hold a fraction of their deposits on reserve. When the Fed was initially set up at the beginning of the Federal Reserve, which is 1913, the banks had a 20% reserve requirement ratio, which meant they had to hold 20% of their deposits on reserve. That's cash in their vaults or reserves on deposit at the Fed. Okay. That was lowered to 10%. Okay. And that lasted up until the Trump administration. Okay. Under the Trump administration, that Federal Reserve, that reserve requirement ratio was dropped to 0, which means that technically, fractional reserve banks in the United States do not have to hold reserves. Now, there's another aspect of banking regulation that does force them to hold cash, and that's capital requirements under something called Basel II, Basel III. Okay, those are banking agreements amongst all the countries that their banks would hold a certain amount of capital. Some of that capital is cash or deposits at the Fed. Okay. So when the Fed buys an asset that increases reserves in the banking system, some of those reserves are what we call excess reserves. Okay, currently all reserves are excess reserves now, theoretically. Okay. Excess reserves are reserves that the bank has above what they're required to hold. So there's a little equation we use. Excess reserves are equal to total reserves minus the required reserves. Right now, that's 0. Okay. Total reserves go up, excess reserves go up. Okay. Now, excess reserves typically pay the bank no interest. Okay. That's money they've got that they're paying interest on, but they're not receiving interest on those excess reserves. Required reserves also typically don't pay interest, but you can't lend them out. Can't do anything about that if you have them. But you can lend these excess reserves out. Okay. And you can lend them out at 1 over the reserve requirement ratio. The banking system can create a certain number of dollars of checking account balances for every dollar in reserves. And that is determined by 1 over the reserve requirement ratio. So for example, when the reserve requirement ratio was 0.1, the bank could multiply the money supply by 10 times the amount they could create $10 in checking accounts for every dollar that the Fed created and put into the banking system as a reserve. So what that meant was if the banks are fully lent up, every dollar in the bank's vaults or on reserve at the Fed is backing 10 other dollars in deposits. Anybody see a problem with that? Let's say there are two more people. Okay. Let's say each one of us had a dollar checking account balance at the bank, but there's $1 in the vault. What's the problem with that? We can't all get our money out at the same time. Okay, if we all, we have to be all of us, but yeah, if enough of us went down to the bank and said we need our money back, unless the bank could sell assets, and those assets are their loans, okay, they wouldn't have enough money to pay us. That's called a bank run. And when the bank can't pay, that's a bank run. We call it bankrupt. That's where the word comes from. Okay.
What does a bank do if that happens? What happens if I go to the bank and they tell me they can't give me the money?
It depends. So anyway, before we get to that, when these reserves are created, that increases the supply, I forgot to put passive, of loanable funds. So the banks have more money to loan. And in order to loan it, they have to decrease interest rates to increase. I'm saying the number of loans here to make it easy, but the amount of money they lend out, because they got to lend more money out. Otherwise, they have these excess reserves that are just sitting in their vaults. They're paying interest on it. And they're not being paid any interest just for it sitting in their vault, so they're losing money. There's an incentive for them to lend out these excess reserves. Okay. So money enters into credit markets first. That causes a decrease in what we'll call nominal or market, let's call it market interest rates. The rate of interest on the banking system, here's the demand for loanable funds. Here's the supply of loanable funds. If new bank reserves enter into the market, I don't believe it, that increases the supply of loanable funds. The price of money is the interest rate. So here's our initial interest rate, I sub 0. We increase the amount of loanable funds, no change in the demand for them. That's going to cause interest rates to drop. It works. No, I don't have one. It causes interest rates to drop. More new loans are made. So here, more loans are made than from before. So people borrow more money to start business projects. Now, the problem here is that the market rate of interest is now lower than what we call the neutral or natural rate of interest. The neutral or natural rate of interest is the interest that would prevail on the market when there are no changes in the money supply. So we need a constant money supply. There would be borrowing and lenders, and they would approach an equilibrium interest rate. That equilibrium interest rate, in the absence of changes in the money supply, would be the neutral rate. And that would reflect people's time preferences. Remember, we talked about the fact that people prefer present goods to future goods. We prefer satisfying our wants and needs now to having to wait for them, right? How many of you are hungry? I didn't eat breakfast today, right? I would rather eat now, okay? But I have to delay that gratification because I'm teaching you. And I'm going to get money in the future for doing it. And then I'll have to have more, and I'll get more breakfasts. Okay. Let's say you have cash. You get a $100 bill in your wallet. You look out and you say, I could go out today with this $100 bill, and none of you guys could ever get a date, but let's say you could. Let's say you flashed 100 enough, and some woman was hungry enough and said, yeah, I'll go out with you, partner. Right? How desperate do you think a woman would have to be to go out with a partner? How desperate? Mary, how desperate? Do you think he's cute? You think he could get a date? Really? I don't.
I look better some days than others.
We're gonna hold a secret ballot amongst the gals. We'll see. Well, I'll hold a vote. We'll see if you can actually get a date, Parker. Okay. Or Parker says, I could save that money and put it in the bank and gain interest on it, make more money later. Okay. His willingness to do that is determined by his time preference rate. How willing Parker is to forego present satisfactions for future ones. He compares that to the interest rate. Okay. Now Parker might say, I want to put this money, I want to go out and flash the $100 bill and get a date and spend it now. Or he says, well, in the future, I'd rather have 2 dates. I'm gonna, $200 bills to flash. Okay. He'd rather do that in, say, 10 years. He'd rather have 2 dates in 10 years, which would be an infinite increase in the number of dates he's ever had. Right. You're next. Don't worry about it. No, I just picked Parker because and then you can get it. It's okay. Over one now, but he doesn't want to wait 20 years. If the interest rate were enough, then it would pay Parker enough to have 2 dates in less than 10 years, he'd save the money. If, on the other hand, it would take 20 years before he had enough for 2 dates, Parker would say, no. I'm gonna go on the date now and flash the 100 now. There you go, a couple of ones to put behind it. Such a nice, I don't think you can say this anymore. It might be like on PC, but get you a nice Italian bankroll. I'll probably get sued by the Italians. All right. But during normal times, where there is no change in the money supply, we would have some rate of interest on the market that would allow Parker to make that decision. When we increase the money supply, we lower the interest rate below that rate. But it isn't due to any change in people's time preferences. Parker doesn't become more willing to wait for that date. Instead, we increase the money supply. Some person in a central bank
punches some keys, and now interest rates are lower. It's not because people are more willing to save, just someone made some keys. And that causes distortions in the economy. Let's say that's going to cause an increase in investment spending. As demonstrated by this graph. Okay. Now, the way that entrepreneurs, remember we're talking about Entrepreneurs Friday too, the way that entrepreneurs make decisions, they compare the cost of the money with the expected return on investments. So we're going to have investments here. And then the expected returns for them. And then we'll have a little box here on whether or not an entrepreneur would do it. So let's say that an entrepreneur could have a plane factory and expected that to have a 10% return. You could have a car factory. They expected an 8% return. You could have a motorcycle factory. They expected a 6% return. Then they could have a bicycle factory, which he expected to make a 4% return on. Okay. Now, let's say this interest rate here, let's say that's 7%. Okay. The neutral rate of interest before any monetary shenanigans goes on is 7%. Which one of these investments would we put a check mark? Which one of these investments would an entrepreneur decide to borrow money at 7% for? Would he borrow money at 7% to get a 10% return on a plane factory? Dang Skippy. Right? Would he invest 7% to get 8% on a car factory? Dang Skippy. Would he borrow money at 7% to earn 6% on a motorcycle factory? No. Bicycle factory? No. So these projects would get started. These would be left to the side. Okay, they're not worth it. Now, we like it that entrepreneurs do this. Now, we'd all like more motorcycles, wouldn't we? We all might like more bicycles. But the problem is, to produce more motorcycles or more bicycles, we have to give up something else that has a high enough return to justify it. That return, that neutral rate, helps us allocate resources only to their most important uses. Someone would rather have a, let's say trying to think of an accessory for a car. Oh, a radio factory here is making 7.1%. Okay, we're willing to pay more compared to the cost of producing those radios than we are the motorcycles. So we'd rather have the radios that go with the cars than the motorcycles. Okay. When interest rates drop, and we'll call this 3%. Should have done that in green, I'm sorry. I had a green pen in my hand. Okay, when interest rates drop to 3%, now which investments would we undertake? Would we make the airplane factory? Dang Skippy. How about the car factory? Heck yeah. Motorcycle factory? How about the bicycle factory? Yeah. These two projects now get started, but people aren't willing to wait for them. That's one problem. The other problem is there are not enough real resources in the economy to complete those projects. They are mistakes. We started them thinking that they're going to be profitable and that there's going to be enough real savings out there for those projects to be completed. We said at the very beginning of class that in order for any capital good to be built, somebody has to have first saved. If Robinson ever wanted to build the spear to catch the fish, he had to first cut back on his own consumption. Instead of catching 3 fish per day and eating them all, he had to catch 3 fish per day and only eat 2 of them, saving that 3rd fish to dry out until he had 2 dried fish, which was enough to put in his pocket to go out into the jungle and build the spear. Here, some interest rate went down because somebody printed up more money out of thin air. Does that make you want to save more? When you wake up in the morning, Kate, do you say, I wonder what Janet Yellen did today? Or actually, it's not Janet Yellen, but I wonder the Federal Reserve did today. So I can make a decision on how much of my paycheck to save. Is that what you do? No, Kate thinks about what he wants in the future compared to what he wants right now. And if he has a low time preference rate, he'll be more willing to save money for those future things. You can take $100, get a date right now, but if he saves it, in 2 years, he can go out and buy a motorcycle. All right. What does he like better? Depends on his time preference rate. If he has a very high time preference rate, he only considers now, he doesn't worry about the future. We have names for those people: babies, criminals, politicians. Okay. He says, yep, I don't care. I don't care if I get a motorcycle in 2 years. I want to spend the money now. If you have a low time preference, and we call those people capitalists, he might say, I'm willing to save that money and wait 2 years. Well, it'll build up, and then I'll have enough to buy a motorcycle. I like the motorcycle in 2 years better than the date today. You probably need more than $100. You better flash like a lot of Benjamins, or have a lot of ones behind you and not a suit. All right. So no one saved for these resources. No one said, I'm cutting back on my consumption. And I'm going to leave pizza, iPods, and beer, the things that people like, out there for those to be given to workers and to resource providers to produce the factors of production to make these. They don't exist. And that triggers the boom. So the money supply increases, interest rates drop, investment spending increases, prices and wages start to increase, because now to start those factories, I need factors of production. We'll use labor because it's the easiest one to understand, but the same thing goes on with steel and land, all of the land factors of production that we talked about. So let's say we have this perfectly functioning economy. Each one of you is an entrepreneur. Nothing has changed. You are producing the right amount of what you produce to satisfy your customers and maximize your profits. Produce more, your profits will go down. Produce less, your profits will go down. Okay, and everybody knows this, except me. Okay, so this new money enters into credit markets. I think it's time to start the motorcycle and the bicycle factories. You guys know it's not. You know that nothing has changed. People are still saving the same amount of stuff. People haven't decided that the future is more important than the past any more than they have before. Nothing's changed. You should keep producing the same amount of output. Yet I decide to borrow the funny money It caused the interest rate to go from 7 to 3% because I don't listen to myself. Nobody else does, why should I? And I borrow the money to start those businesses. I need factors of production. I need labor. Where am I going to get it from? I'm going to hire it from one of you. So I go out there and everybody's being paid $8 an hour. Okay. I have a hole. I need labor to build and staff these factories. So I need labor. This is the hole. These are the people I need to work. I don't have them. Okay. So in order to get them, I have to bid that labor away from one of you. And let's say you're paying workers $8 an hour. Okay. So the going wage is $8 an hour. At $8 an hour, everyone's profitable. So I go out there, I borrow this funny money. I try and hire the factors of production and find I can't get them at $8 an hour. I gotta pay more. I gotta pay $9. So I borrow a little bit more money. And I start paying workers $9 an hour. And I bid them away from Noah. You have fewer workers now, Noah. How much output are you supposed to produce? Same amount, right, that you're producing before, but you can't because you don't have the workers. If Noah wants to keep his production up, he's going to have to bid workers away from someone else. He's going to have to borrow some of the funny money and pay more than $9 an hour. And you're going to buy them from, my brain's going on me today. Beverly, I'm so sorry. You're going to buy them from Beverly. So give that pen to Beverly. Now he's paying $10 an hour for workers. Hey, Beverly, you need some more workers, right? So you go out, borrow some funny money to keep your production up to the same level. And you bid those workers away from closest to you. Just give it to, I was going to go around, but give it to Parker. Okay. Parker, you do the same thing, right? Give it to Elena so you don't have to reach. And you'll be the last one, Elena. So now everyone's paying these workers $12 an hour. Wages have gone up. Prices have gone up because now these workers who are making $12 an hour, they can go out and buy more bicycles, motorcycles, cars, and stuff. So at the same time that my costs are going up, so are my revenues. So the way that this continues on is that as we pay higher resource prices, the resource owners, in our case, laborers, have higher money incomes, which they can go out and spend on those goods that I'm producing by mistake. So I don't see initially that I'm making a mistake. And that's because the new funny money is going into paying higher wages. Usually it goes into paying higher capital goods, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. And those workers, those factor owners, have higher incomes and are able to spend more money on bicycles and motorcycles and everything else. If their incomes didn't go up, but our costs started to go up to build these factories, I realize that those returns are low and they're going down. But because my prices go up at this, that I sell the motorcycles and bicycles for, it goes up at the same time my costs go up, I don't notice it. Or at least it doesn't become an issue. It doesn't force me to stop my mistake. And that's the boom. Can I erase all of this? And I'm going to draw the boom here. Here's output, Here's time. That triggers the boom. Now the boom seems like it's great. Asset prices are going up, wages are going up. Everyone appears to be making profits. Profits are what we call wide and deep. I call them wide and deep when we talk about chapter 16. Everybody seems to be making money. You can relate this back to the housing boom. Okay. When, remember Bill came in there, right? Bill was like, how you doing, boy, right? Let me tell you about myself. I'm a real estate investor, right? And I go out and borrow money and buy a house, sit on it, do nothing to it, hold it for 3 months, sell it for $30,000 more than I paid for it. How do you like that, boy? Right? Bill was a moron. Bill probably had, hopefully, a double-digit IQ. He wasn't Donald Trump. He was the paint guy at Home Depot. Yet all of a sudden, everyone's making money buying and flipping houses in Vegas because of the cheap money coming in, driving interest rates down, allowing people to pay more for houses and buy more houses. Yet they couldn't afford them. Eventually, one of two things happens, or both. And this is going to trigger the boom, the bust. I wrote boom here, yeah, okay, good. The bust. Either the money supply stops increasing, and here I'm making that simple. It actually has to increase at an increasing rate. Because to keep that little pen moving around to other people, we got to increase the amount of money we print over the last time to keep that going. Okay, because the wages are going up, right? We increase the rate we print the money up too. But I'm just going to put the money supply stops increasing, okay, or the rate stops increasing. Either that and or businessmen realize that the new projects started during the boom and I'm going to put here the mistakes will never be profitable and or there are not enough saved resources available to complete them. Okay. Parker and Cade spent the money to get the dates. But we thought, or it appeared because the interest rate had lowered, that they suddenly decided to save that money. And take those restaurant meals and the motorcycle we would have bought, push it away, and I could use that to pay for the factors of production I needed to fund all these projects. But instead, they spent the money. But the interest rate still went down because the Fed created bank reserves that increased loanable funds in the banking system that they then lent out and caused the interest rates to go down with. When this happens, we realized during the boom, we made a mistake. Now, when you realize you're making a mistake, if you're not a politician or a media figure, you don't double down on it. Okay? Ladies, how many of you have ever dated a guy and found out he was a loser? Okay? Beverly says she has. When you find out he is a loser, what do? You kick him to the curb. You leave him alone, right? You say the air is too fine up here for you, buddy. You need to be down lower on the food chain. Okay? You dump him. Now, some people will say, oh no, I fix him. Ladies, I'm telling you something right now. You will never fix one of us. It is impossible. Do you know why you'll never fix us? So we ain't broken. There's nothing wrong with us. Okay? Think about it. Cade, let's say you you didn't make enough money. What would you do?
Like try to make more.
Yeah, you go to school, get an education, you work harder, you find an extra job. If you thought you didn't make enough money, you'd do something about it, wouldn't you? Okay? I'm fat. Let's say I thought I was too fat. What do you think I would do, Elena? I'm fat, right? What do you think I did? I'd lose weight. Okay, I go to the gym or something, or I eat less. I thought it was important, right? Is that fun? There's some kind of wrong. Okay. Anyway, if there's something wrong with us, we'll fix it. In fact, we are good at fixing problems. Who fixes almost all the cars in America? Guys. We see a problem, we want to fix it. We get complained about it. Right? Ladies, you ever vent to a guy? Don't do it. It's torture to us. Okay? You say you're telling me, oh, I got this problem. Every time I go out the door, my neighbor's dog barks at me and I'm scared of it. I wouldn't sit there and listen to how scared you were of it. I'd say, shoot it. Right? Shoot it or go tell your neighbor, hey man, if your dog chases after me one more time, I'm gonna put a bullet in it. Right? That's all I want to hear. That's all I want to say. I'm done. If you don't want to do it, then I just think you're crazy or stupid. Why do I want to do that? Well, then you're gonna have the dog chase after you. You would just sat there and told me and complained at me, you don't like it. We're problem fixers, man. That's what we do. If we got a problem, we'll fix it. Okay. Guys, you ever date? No. You ever know anybody who dated a girl and found out she was what was it? Oh, she's crazy? Never? You know my friends ever dated a girl and found out they're crazy? What did you tell your friend to do? Kick him to the curb, right? And I'm going to tell you something right now, guys. Do not ever collect benefits from a crazy girl. Don't get those crazy girl benefits, okay? You know what I'm talking about. Well, maybe they don't. Pass up on them, okay? All right? You'll walk away. You liquidate your mistake. Businessmen are no different. I fell in love, right? I like money. I fell in love with the motorcycle and the bicycle factory because I thought they were going to make me rich. It might even be better than a wife. If you're rich and in the right place, you could get like 4 wives or 3 wives. All right? I'm in love with him. Thought I was in love with him, right? When you dated that guy, when you first met him, did you think, oh, he's a loser? No. You thought he was wonderful, wasn't he? He was going to be the man of your dreams. He's going to give you everything, a happy life, a dog, a picket fence, right? And then you found out he's a schmuck, right? Yeah. You kicked him to the curb. I thought these were going to make me money. Now I realize that they're not. I'm kicking them to the curb. Businessmen will then liquidate their mistakes. Okay, when you liquidate a mistake, just like breaking up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? When you break up with a boyfriend, what do you do? What's the first thing you do when you're kicking some dude to the curb after you tell him? What do? You liquidate mistakes. Say, here's your stuff, give me my stuff, and we're out, right? Give me my stuff, here's your stuff. Businessmen will go out there and say, oh gosh, this thing, I'm not in love with it anymore. We're never gonna make a profit, it's never gonna get finished. Get rid of it, everything. The workers, you can work, but you can't work here, go home, right? This land, do we own it? Yeah, sell it. The metal sitting around here, do we own that, or we get our consignment? We got a consignment, give it back. Right? We're going to liquidate our mistakes, sell everything off, and hopefully have enough money to pay off our loans. If we don't, then the bank doesn't get back their money. They suffer losses. I suffer losses as an entrepreneur. And that causes a decrease in output, right? We were producing these factories, now we're not. Causes unemployment to go up, prices to fall, asset prices to fall, right? If we increase the supply of land out there for sale, to sell it, what are we gonna have to do? Drop the prices. Okay. Okay, wages fall, right? BK is bankruptcy, bankruptcies increase. Businesses start to suffer more losses on paper. And that triggers the bust. The bust, if we don't do anything, the bust will eventually end. Here's my boom right over here. I just explained the bust. How does the economy recover? The economy will start to recover when, there's the bust, here's the recovery. The recovery starts when all the mistakes are liquidated. And prices and wages have fallen. Now, we don't like to have this happen. No one wants to see wages fall, do we? I want to see you making less money. I certainly don't want to make less money. But oh shit, I erased it. Remember we were up here to 12 bucks an hour? That labor was probably only worth about 8. We're overpaying for it. Okay. At $12 an hour, I can't make a profit with that labor, so I have to fire them. I can only rehire them back at a profitable wage rate, say around $8 an hour. So we want prices and wages to fall. We want wages to fall. So those unemployed resources that we had from the bust can be reemployed, producing these things rather than those. These are still wealth creating. They make the world a better place. These are wealth destroying. We have these, but now we won't, if we get these, we won't have the radios to put in the cars. So we want those firms to go bankrupt. We want the factors of production that they control to be released back onto the market, where they can be hired by the radio factory to make the radios for the cars we want. So we're going to get an increase. Well, I mean, the increase in the number of bankruptcies. As prices and wages fall, output increases. Okay. wages tick up a little bit. Okay. These numbers over here, I should have made bigger. Okay. So these are smaller increases. Output increases, wages start to increase. Prices go up a little bit, because they fell during the bust. Asset prices recover. Bankruptcies return to normal. That's with no change in the money supply. Unemployment returns to normal. We'll call that about 5%. Okay. Oh, unemployment. No, I got unemployment. Which one am I missing now? Oh, interest rates. Interest rates tick back up to normal. I think I forgot to put interest rates drop here. That's with no changes to the money supply. So what I'm trying to show you here is that increases in the money supply that enter into credit markets first cause the business cycle, according to the Austrian theory of business cycle. Okay? That the boom that we see during the business cycle is an illusion. We think we're better off. People think they're richer. Okay? But it's an illusion. Because the things that we're now creating that we weren't creating before the boom, they're not making the world a better place. They're not creating future wealth. They're destroying it. Okay? They have to stop. Just as if someone were coming by every night and breaking the windows in this building. They're destroying wealth, aren't they, Mary? And we want to stop them, don't we? We don't want to keep replacing the windows every day. Because if we do that, we'll never get new buildings. We won't have windows for them. There's no difference. The only difference is intent. A criminal intends on damaging wealth, doesn't it? A failed entrepreneur doesn't intend on it. Once he starts to realize he is destroying wealth, not because he cares about society, but because he cares about profits, he'll stop doing it, unlike the criminal. Okay. The criminal, we got to stop him by arresting him, right? Forcing him to not do it. Right? Or he'll stop doing it when no one will lend him the money to do it. The money supply stops increasing. Okay. Once he releases those resources, in order for the economy to recover, we got to put them back to work. But we can't put them back to work destroying wealth. Instead, we have to put them back to work creating wealth. And in order for that to happen, wages have to fall. The prices of the output that we produced have to fall, the motorcycles, the bikes, the cars. Only then will people start buying the output produced by those industries. While their wages are falling, the prices have to fall. While the asset prices fall, prices of the goods and services we sell to those resource owners have to fall so that they can buy all the output that we produce. In any point in this, did I say that the government could make things better? They can only make them worse. They can make it worse by creating this, right? They borrow the money, the Fed monetizes the debt, the whole cycle starts. They can make this worse by not doing that or subsidizing these mistakes. When COVID hit, what did the government do for the airline industry? It bailed them out. What did they do for the big banks during the financial crisis in 2008? Bailed them out. If you make mistakes and someone else pays the cost of them, are you going to stop? Let's say I told you all today, this weekend, if you go out and you get in a traffic accident, don't worry about it. I'll pay the fine and I'll do the time. Would you make more or fewer mistakes if I told you that? Yeah, more mistakes, right? More speeding. Okay? What if I told you, hey, don't worry about it. If you go out and get pregnant or get somebody pregnant this weekend, don't worry about it. I'll carry the baby and I'll pay for it. I can't do that. Either one. Maybe more pregnancies, right? What if the government told you, hey, don't worry about it. If you don't have a job, I'll pay you not to have a job. So the government can make the recovery worse. Unemployment compensation. Okay, which we normally think of as a nice thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we want people to suffer. Okay, but if I'm paying you $10 an hour, let's just say $9 an hour for 40 hours worth of work to be unemployed. If someone offers you a job at $8 an hour, would you take it? A lot of people would, because they have high time preference rates. Okay. Now, if you have a low time preference rate, right, you might say, yeah, I got a couple months of unemployment coming at $9 an hour. And when that's up, I got nothing. If I take the $8 an hour job, who knows, I might be making $9 an hour in a year or more, right? So a lot of people won't go back to work. We're seeing this right now with COVID. I saw an ad the other day, right? They extended unemployment benefits that gave you a COVID kicker for unemployment, right? $300 a month now, I think. It used to be like, I don't know, $6. I think it's $3 now. You're unemployed for the COVID. For the COVIDs. I didn't even know what COVID is. I haven't seen them yet. I'm looking for one. I think everybody else is too. But anyway, there's a McDonald's. The guy owns a bunch of McDonald's down near South Florida. He's paying people $50 to come in for an interview at McDonald's. $50 just to come interview. You don't have to take the job. You ever heard of that before? He can't find enough people to work because they won't come off unemployment. Or they're getting what we're now starting to call a UBI, universal basic income, right? If you have, I think it's $300 a month per kid, or is it $5? I can't remember.
Oh, wow.
Stupid Mary's turning 18. I'm not getting any of that COVID's money for Mary. Thanks, Mary. And she didn't get it either. It just disappears thanks to you turning 18 soon. Her birthday's a few years after mine. I don't get any COVID money. That's from the kids. Like $300 or $500 a month. Taking that check.
I got one like $600.
Yeah, that was the
That was
old one.
college, though. It was like something to do with college.
Oh, really? Well, we all got one a little while ago. But this is after, it starts July. Every month for July, you get like $300 or $500 a kid. I can't remember. It's a tax credit, which means it's not taxable. They just steal it from someone else to give it to me, but that's their problem, right?
It was like the CARES Act or something.
Yeah, the Biden's CARE Act or whatever he calls it. But anyway, yeah, these people are wanting to go back to work. If you give and or lengthen unemployment compensation, or if you have a UBI, that's going to delay those people re-entering the workforce and delay the recovery. We don't want people not working. If they're not working, they're not producing anything. And this comes out of the pie of what everyone else produced. So that means workers lose at the expense of people getting a free check. Social Security. Social Security affects this, okay? I got a colleague I know who's working, they're over 67 or whatever the retirement age is, right? If they were to increase his Social Security, what do you think would happen? Stop working. And let's say Social Security is pensions, private pensions and private things where you save your own money, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. We'd probably be better off with that than we would Social Security. Social Security pays into the system, the return on the contributions you make are abysmal. Okay. The pay-as-you-go system. So it's not like, right, you and I, we paid in Social Security for a while now, right? And we like to think, oh, it's got a Social Security account for me. You know, a little box, this is Beverly on it. And all that money you've been paying in, they get thrown in that box. And maybe throw a little grow light on it so it grows, right? So that when you retire, they get all kinds of money to pay for your retirement. No. Our money went to pay our parents' retirement. That money's gone. And they say, oh, we got the Social Security Trust Fund, right? You know what that is? It's a bunch of IOMs. The government borrowed the money. They didn't use, took it. Spent it on some war or some other social program. They had more money coming in for Social Security than they had payments going out. They spent it, hookers and drugs. Okay, doesn't matter, might as well then. And then when you and I retire, they're going to make them pay for our retirement. There's no money there. If the government said, hey, I'm cashing in this I owe me, they say, oh, I owe me, you owe me. Remember when you're a kid in a piggy bank and you want some candy? You took some money out, you said, oh, I owe me $1, right? Put it in there. That's the same thing that the government does with Social Security. The money's gone. The hookers, the dealers, whoever they spent it on, got it. War merchants, is it close? Okay, but that's the business cycle. That's the Austrian business cycle thing. I did this today because I wanted to make sure and get it out. This, in my view, is the best way of looking at business cycle. The lectures in 2021, the video quizzes and lectures, I will supplement those when we come in on, well, we won't come in, but hopefully you can't come in on Thursday. I would recommend coming in on Thursday if you can, rather than viewing it online. Okay. And then don't forget Friday, please. I need you guys to show up because one, I'm going to give you lots of extra credit, but two, I will try from Oklahoma doing this and have like 4 people that are asleep. Then we'll do it for other students again in the future. I don't benefit from this. I hear talk all the time. I go to conferences with them to listen to him present. He's very good. You'll enjoy it. You learn a lot. You learn stuff you learn from him, you won't learn from anyone else. You right?
Can we like have a friend?
You can oh, by the way, anybody can come on this thing that they wants to. You can have your whole family, everybody you know can come on. The only thing is, if someone acts up or forgets to shut their thing off, I'll mute them, right? You know, somebody's, you know, got their mute off and they're talking to their brother or something, right? I'll mute them, okay? But yeah, if you want friends, family, anyone you want can come on there as long as, you know, as long as they don't disrupt it. You know, so like if you know, if you got like a ne'er-do-well friend who, you know, can keep his mouth shut, don't let it go. Because I mean,
Question.
but
So
other
what
than that,
happens?
no, and now, oh, one more thing. But if you have a friend that has a lot of questions and is interested, bring them on.
With the unemployment compensation, they can't find anybody to work, and once the company, unemployment is over, then what?
And then they go to work. They
Right.
lengthen this during the bust usually. That's what they did during the last one. They lengthened it to 2 years.
But if some of us, if the other people, well, I guess
We're up to you.
there's no other people who wants to take those jobs, so they're just kind of hanging over.
Well, the reason nobody wants to take them is because the people who would be the ones willing to take those jobs oftentimes are receiving unemployment compensation with a COVID bonus, and they don't want them.
Okay.
And I don't, and, you know, I'm not saying we shouldn't help people, okay? One, I don't think the government should do it. I think it should be done better through private charity. But the thing is, we don't want to help people in a way that prevents them from getting back to work. We don't want people on the dole that can work.
Well, I guess I'm confused because I'm a, you know, disabled veteran, and of
Mhm.
course they pay me for that, but that doesn't mean I want to sit at home and drink my time because I get checked.
Right. And I'm not saying you would.
But I don't
Typically, it's
understand
gonna
the other
be
people
your
who get it.
higher time preference people who are gonna do this. Okay, welfare is another component. Welfare keeps people from working. We all know that,
But
right?
it should be a help hand up and not
Right.
necessarily hand
Yeah,
out.
and I think it would be better done privately. We shouldn't help people out through the government programs, especially the way that they're currently construed. Because if you are on, say, welfare, we commonly call welfare, temporary assistance to needy families, all you have to do, I think, I don't even think they have to show that they're looking for work. I can't remember on TANF. Unemployment, you have to at least show that you're looking for work.
And on food stamps, you have to.
You know, but think of all these people who we're paying. Okay, there's another component to this, and it's minimum wage laws. I think that they should go away. And we sit there, we say poor. Remember, we talked about it. I don't think anybody's poor in this country. Okay, no one's dying of starvation. No one's not living without a roof over their house. You know, gosh, you want to see stuff. I watched these videos this weekend, last couple of weeks. It's really interesting. It's about this guy. His name is Harold Balders. Anybody ever seen this video? Yeah, he traveled. He went to live with a Maasai tribe in the middle of Tanzania. These people live 2 miles from water. I think almost every day, not every day, but almost every day, the women walk down to the river. They have a donkey they take with them. They fill big jugs full of water and they put those on the donkey. And then they take big 5 or 10 gallon buckets, fill them up, put them on top of their head and walk back miles. They live in houses that are made of cow dung, straw, and mud. And they only last about 2 to 3 years of the rain, and then the women build them all. The women have to rebuild them. Not only they, but the town that they go into, right? They have no electricity. They have to go a mile or 2 into town, walk. And they get there with like their cell phones. They have to pay to have their cell phones charged. And you might not get it charged because the town might not have electricity that day. I was watching it and there's an American, I think she's an American gal. She lives with them. She's married to like one of the Maasai tribesmen. I'm not sure if she means married like we mean married. I don't understand it. I don't know which one was supposedly her husband or if there was a husband. I don't know how it worked. It might have been a different relationship. I don't know. But she's been living with them off and on for 4 years. She told the Harold Balder guy, she said, the first thing you do when you get into town is you go find the phone charger guy because the power might not shut off. At least if you started in the morning, you might get enough power to get a charge to, do something with it. And he's using it to film all his videos. Who lives like that here in this country? Who walks 2 miles to get water? Not one person. Who lives in an unair conditioned, unheated hut made of cow poop? No one. Dirt floors. And they have goats living in there. Because it gets hot, the goats will die. Who lives like that? They eat like a pita. That's all they eat most of the time. Because he was there, they slaughtered a goat. And they get sick. And they make, when they slaughter a goat, they make a medicine out of bark and tree roots and goat intestines and what else they put in there? It kills the intestinal parasites that they have. Makes them feel better. They're medicine. Who lives like that? No one. Now I'll tell you one thing. They seem like some happy people, man. They really did. The women, they're like singing and laughing when they've got a bucket full of 10-gallon water bucket on their head. What is that, like 80 pounds on your head? Maybe it's a 5-gallon bucket, I don't know. 40 to 80 pounds on your head. Lena, do you think you could do that for 5 minutes, let alone walk 2-3 miles with that? I couldn't. My neck would snap. Right? And these people, we say, are poor. Now, the other thing is, let's say, and minimum wage prevents people from getting jobs because they're not capable of generating $7.25 an hour initially. Does anyone make minimum wage their whole life? No, not unless they're bad people, right? They don't show up to work. They don't get any better at their work or any more productive, right? I mean, even you work fast food at McDonald's, right? I mean, this guy's paying like $15 an hour. He ain't paying minimum wage. He's paying people $50 an hour to come in for an interview for a $15 an hour job. Okay. But even if $15 an hour isn't that much in, say, Miami, are they going to make that their whole lives? No. And you say, well, that's not a great industry. Does anybody know what an assistant manager at a fast food restaurant makes? How much?
I don't know that. It's a good amount though.
Oh, it's like 40,000 a year. You know what a manager makes? 60 to 80. A general manager makes? Start adding up. Are those hard jobs? Anybody ever had a fast food job? I did. I'm the only one. What are you guys like, all pampered princes and princesses? It sucks.
I'll get annoyed.
Your feet hurt. You're on your feet 8 hours. You're constantly working. Even if nobody's in the restaurant, you don't stand around. You're like, clean this up, go get more tomatoes cut or whatever, make some more salad dressing, whatever you got. And you're tired at the end of the day. And you're fast food, you're greasy, fryer grease all over the place. You smell like whatever you cooked. It's a hard job. It's not fun. You can make it fun. Make any job fun. Just like those ladies, right? They make, who the hell wants to walk? I mean, before I say hell. Is it time? Oh, I'm overboard. I have no idea that far over.